Have you ever wondered what happens when someone in power makes a hasty decision only to regret it later? Today's story will make you question everything about leadership, fairness, and the way we judge people. It all begins in a bustling retail store, the kind where customers are always in a hurry and employees barely catch a moment to breathe. Enter Alex, the new manager, sharp-suited and ambitious, ready to make his mark. He's been hired to whip the team into shape, and he's not one to tolerate mistakes. Efficiency above all, Alex likes to say, but his strictness has already earned him a reputation. Some employees call him a perfectionist, others whisper about his quick temper behind his back. In the middle of all this is Emma, a quiet cashier who recently joined the team. She's different, gentle, hardworking, and noticeably pregnant. Emma isn't one to draw attention to herself. She clocks in, does her job diligently, and doesn't complain. Yet, her growing belly doesn't escape notice, nor does the fact that she sometimes needs to step away to rest. While most of her coworkers admire her dedication, Alex sees things differently. He doesn't know much about Emma's background. He hasn't asked. To him, she's just another employee who needs to prove she can keep up. And Emma, she's not looking for special treatment. All she wants is to do her job, but balancing work and pregnancy is no easy feat. What Alex doesn't know, however, is that Emma's presence in this store isn't as ordinary as it seems. Behind her quiet demeanor lies a secret that will soon turn Alex's world upside down. So, what happens when a leader makes the wrong assumptions about someone? Stay with us until the end of this story. You won't believe how it all unfolds. Emma wasn't like most of the employees Alex had dealt with before. While others chatted during breaks or bonded over shared complaints about work, Emma kept to herself. She was polite and warm but rarely engaged in personal conversations. She had this air of quiet determination, as if she was there for a purpose far greater than anyone realized. But there was one thing no one could ignore: Emma's pregnancy. Her growing belly was a silent reminder of the challenges she was juggling. Most of the team admired her for it, whispering about how strong she must be to work through such an exhausting time. Even customers sometimes offered her kind words. Despite the extra weight she carried both physically and emotionally, Emma never asked for special treatment. She worked the same long shifts as everyone else, often on her feet for hours at a time. Occasionally, though, fatigue would catch up with her. She'd step aside for a quick breath or a sip of water, always careful not to let it affect her work. For Alex, however, Emma's actions seemed like an excuse. In his eyes, every minute away from the register was a minute wasted. He had no patience for what he saw as slacking off, and Emma, with her frequent breaks, quickly became a target of his frustration. What Alex didn't realize or care to ask was how much effort Emma was putting in just to keep up. He didn't notice the way she pushed herself to greet every customer with a smile, even when her back ached or her feet felt swollen. And he certainly didn't notice the way her coworkers tried to pick up the slack for her, knowing she would never ask for help herself. To Alex, Emma was just another employee who needed to step up. But to everyone else, she was more than that. She was an inspiration, someone who showed up every day despite her challenges. And while Emma never complained, there was a quiet strength about her, a strength that hinted at a much bigger story waiting to unfold. If only Alex had taken the time to see it. Alex had always seen himself as a natural-born leader. To him, leadership was about control, setting strict standards and ensuring everyone followed them to the letter. He believed in structure, efficiency, and discipline. There was no room for sympathy in his rulebook, and certainly no patience for what he considered excuses. When Alex first joined the store as manager, he made his presence felt immediately. The once relaxed work environment was replaced with an air of tension. Employees who had been working there for years suddenly found themselves walking on eggshells. Alex's sharp gaze and clipped tone were enough to make even the most confident workers second-guess themselves. He had a simple philosophy: results over relationships. If someone couldn't keep up, they didn't belong, and he didn't hesitate to make that clear. In his first week, Alex had already fired two employees, one for being late and another for what he called a lack of focus. The remaining staff quickly learned to stay in line, but fear, not respect, was what kept them compliant. To Alex, Emma was no different. He didn't care that she was pregnant or that she seemed to be giving her best effort. All he saw was someone who wasn't meeting his high expectations. He watched her closely, noting every time she leaned against the counter to rest or stepped away for a brief break. What annoyed him the most was how the other employees seemed to defend her. He overheard them whispering things like, "She's doing great. considering her condition, or cut her some slack. She's pregnant. To Alex, this was unacceptable. Rules were rules, and Emma wasn't an exception. But Alex's strict approach wasn't just about running a tight ship. Deep down, he wanted to prove himself. As a relatively young manager, he felt the need to assert his authority and show the company that he could handle any situation. And fortunately for Alex, his eagerness to impress blinded him to what was really happening around him and to who Emma truly was. Little did he know, his determination to enforce the rules would soon lead him to make the biggest mistake of his career. Emma's days were anything but easy. While most people could leave their personal lives at the door when they arrived at work, Emma carried hers with her quite literally. The physical toll of pregnancy wasn't something she could ignore, no matter how hard she tried. Mornings were the hardest. Emma would wake up before dawn, her back aching from a restless night's sleep. She'd carefully get ready, making sure to pack healthy snacks to keep her energy up during the long shifts. Her husband had offered countless times to help her, to convince her to take a break from work, but Emma was determined. She wasn't the type to sit back and let others take care of her. At the store, the pace was relentless. Customers came and went in a steady stream, each one expecting quick service and a smile. Emma did her best to keep up, ringing up purchases, bagging items, and answering questions. But as the hours dragged on, her body would remind her that it needed rest. Sometimes, she'd feel a wave of exhaustion so strong that she'd have to step away, leaning against the wall in the back room for just a moment. Other times, she'd feel lightheaded and take a quick sip of water before returning to her register. She hated these moments. They felt like small defeats, but she also knew she couldn't ignore her body's signals. To her coworkers, Emma's determination was admirable. Many of them quietly stepped in to help, offering to cover her shifts or take over tasks when they saw her struggling. "You're amazing for even being here," one of them said one day. Emma had smiled, but she didn't see herself that way. She just saw herself as someone trying to get through the day. Alex, however, saw something entirely different. He didn't see Emma's strength or her effort. He saw a worker who wasn't pulling her weight, someone who took more breaks than the others and moved slower than he thought was acceptable. Emma noticed his cold stares and harsh tone whenever he spoke to her. It stung, but she kept her head down and pushed through. She couldn't afford to lose this job, not now, when she was so close to her due date. What Alex didn't know, though, was that Emma's decision to keep working wasn't just about money. It was about proving something to herself, to her family, and maybe even to him. She was stronger than people gave her credit for, and she wasn't about to let anyone, not even Alex, take that away from her. But Alex wasn't interested in her story. He was only interested in results. And Emma, in his eyes, was quickly becoming more of a problem than an asset. The day it happened, Emma could feel the tension brewing before Alex even said a word. It had been a particularly hectic morning, with long lines of impatient customers and a constant buzz of activity. Emma was doing her best to keep up, but her body was slower than usual. The discomfort in her lower back had started earlier than usual, and she could feel the fatigue creeping in. Mid-shift, she took a moment to lean against the counter, her hand instinctively resting on her belly. She told herself it would only be for a few seconds, just enough to gather her strength. But as she looked up, there was Alex, staring at her with that sharp, disapproving gaze he had perfected. "Emma, a word," he said, his tone clipped and impatient. She followed him to the small break room in the back, her heart pounding. She knew what was coming but still held on to a small hope that he might show some understanding. "You can't keep doing this," Alex began, crossing his arms, leaning on counters, stepping away for breaks. "This isn't what I expect from my team." Emma blinked, stunned. I'm sorry, Alex. It's just that." "I don't need excuses," he interrupted, his voice growing colder. "Everyone here is working hard. If you can't keep up, maybe this isn't the right place for you." His words hit her like a punch to the gut. Emma wanted to defend herself, to explain that she was doing everything she could while carrying the weight of her pregnancy, both literally and figuratively. But she knew it wouldn't matter. Alex wasn't interested in her struggles, only in her output. "I understand," she said quietly, swallowing her pride. "It won't happen again." Alex gave a curt nod. "See that it doesn't." As Emma walked back to her register, she could feel the stares of her coworkers. They didn't need to hear the conversation to know what had happened. Alex's tone and her downcast expression said it all. Later, One of her colleagues whispered, "Are you okay?" Emma forced a small smile and nodded. "I'm fine," she replied, even though she wasn't. The warning stayed with her for the rest of the day, weighing heavier on her than any physical exhaustion. She resolved to push herself harder, to prove to Alex and maybe even to herself that she could handle this. But deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that no matter how hard she tried, it would never be enough for someone like him. Alex, meanwhile, felt no guilt. To him, this was just another example of enforcing the rules. What he didn't realize was that this small act of callousness would set off a chain of events that would soon spiral far beyond his control. The warning may have stung, but it didn't break Emma. If anything, it made her more determined. She arrived at work the next day with a renewed sense of purpose, determined to prove Alex wrong. She wasn't going to let one harsh conversation define her or her capabilities. The day was another whirlwind of activity. Customers came in droves, filling carts and creating long lines at the registers. Emma stayed focused, ringing up items with precision and a warm smile, even when the weight of her growing belly made standing for hours a challenge. She moved a little slower than her coworkers, but her attitude never faltered. Emma's colleagues noticed. They whispered among themselves about how remarkable she was, balancing work and pregnancy with such quiet strength. Some even stepped in to help her when they could, bagging items or taking over tasks to give her a moment to catch her breath. But Emma never asked for help, and she never complained. Even Alex seemed to notice her extra effort, though not in the way Emma hoped. He stood near the registers, arms crossed, watching her every move like a hawk. Every time she paused for even a second, his gaze hardened. It was clear he was waiting for her to slip up again. But Emma didn't let it faze her. She kept going, even when her feet throbbed and her back ached. To her, this wasn't just about keeping a job. It was about proving that she could handle anything life threw at her. She knew Alex didn't believe in her, but that didn't matter. What mattered was that she believed in herself. Still, the pressure was immense. Every shift felt like a marathon, with Alex's scrutiny looming over her like a dark cloud. Yet Emma refused to let him see her struggle. She'd learned how to mask her exhaustion with a polite smile and a steady demeanor. What no one, not even Alex, knew was that Emma wasn't just working for herself. There was something deeper driving her, something she hadn't shared with anyone at the store. Her presence there wasn't just about earning a paycheck. She had a reason for staying, and it was one that Alex would never have guessed. And so, Emma carried on, day after day, pushing herself to her limits. She wasn't looking for sympathy or recognition. She just wanted to prove, to herself and to the world, that she was stronger than they thought. But as determined as she was, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that Alex's patience was wearing thin. And she wasn't wrong. The manager was watching her closely, waiting for an opportunity to act. He believed he was in control of the situation. What he didn't know was that Emma had a secret, one that would turn his carefully controlled world upside down. As the days turned into weeks, Alex's irritation with Emma only grew. No matter how hard she worked or how much she improved, all he could see were the moments when she didn't meet his impossibly high standards. In his mind, every small pause or slightly slower step was proof that she wasn't cut out for the job. He began to keep a mental tally of every instance where Emma didn't live up to his expectations. If she leaned on the counter for even a moment, he noticed. If she asked a coworker to grab an item for a customer, he took it as a sign of laziness. Each perceived shortcoming added fuel to his growing frustration. What made it worse for Alex was the way the other employees seemed to rally around Emma. He overheard their whispered words of encouragement, saw how they subtly covered for her when she was struggling. It irritated him to no end. To Alex, rules were rules, and Emma's pregnancy didn't exempt her from following them. "She's slowing us down," Alex muttered to one of the assistant managers one day. "I don't care what her situation is, this is a business, not a charity." The assistant manager shifted uncomfortably, but didn't respond. Everyone in the store knew better than to argue with Alex. But Alex wasn't just annoyed, he was starting to feel challenged. He had worked hard to establish himself as a no-nonsense leader, someone who didn't tolerate weakness or excuses. Yet here was Emma, defying his authority in her quiet, unintentional way. Her determination to keep working, despite her obvious struggles, seemed to undermine the very principles Alex believed in. To him, Emma represented everything he thought was wrong with the workplace. In his eyes, she was being coddled by her coworkers, allowed to bend the rules because of her condition. It didn't matter that she was doing her best or that she had won the respect of the rest of the team. All Alex could see was an employee who wasn't meeting his standards. His frustration came to a head one particularly busy afternoon. The store was packed, and tensions were high. Emma had just stepped away for a quick drink of water after a long stretch at the register. When she returned, Alex was waiting for her, his expression thunderous. "Do you think this is a break room?" he snapped loud enough for others to hear. Emma opened her mouth to explain, but Alex didn't give her a chance. "I've had enough of this," he continued. "You need to decide if you're here to work or not." The confrontation left the room in stunned silence. Emma's coworkers exchanged nervous glances, unsure whether to step in. Emma, as always, stayed calm. She simply nodded and returned to her register, though her hands trembled slightly as she scanned items. For Alex, the incident only confirmed what he already believed. Emma wasn't cut out for the job. He decided, then and there, that her days at the store were numbered. What Alex didn't realize was that his actions weren't going unnoticed. Someone was watching and they were about to step in. It was a Thursday afternoon when the final straw broke, and it wasn't the busiest day by any means, but it would turn out to be one of the most consequential. It was relatively quiet. The rush of the morning long past, and the usual post-lunch lull had set in. Been standing at the register for what felt like hours, her feet sore, her back aching, exhausted, but she didn't dare take a moment to rest. Learned to push through it, to smile through the discomfort, and to keep her focus sharp. They betrayed her. As a customer walked up to the counter, Emma felt a wave of dizziness wash over her, blurred slightly, and she gripped the counter to steady herself. Though it would only be a few seconds, moment to collect herself, catch her breath. All it took for Alex to spot her, watching from across the room, arms folded tightly across his chest. Narrowed as he saw Emma lean on the counter, her hand resting on her stomach, her head slightly lowered as she tried to steady herself. Second thought, Alex marched over, his steps heavy and deliberate. Again, he snapped, his voice sharp enough to cut through the quiet of the store. Heart sank. She hadn't expected him to confront her now, not like this, in front of customers. To gather her composure, her voice calm despite the panic rising in her chest. Taking a moment, "I'm fine." Alex wasn't having it. "No, you're not fine," he shot back, his tone dripping with disdain. "Taking breaks all day. This isn't the kind of work ethic I expect from my team." Face flushed with embarrassment, her pulse quickening. The few customers in line now turned to her, and she could feel the heat of their gaze, the judgment in her mouth to defend herself, to explain that she wasn't slacking off, that she was doing her best despite the circumstances. But Alex wasn't listening. Alex continued, cutting her off. "Handle the job. Then maybe it's time to move on." It hung in the air like a thunderclap. The accusation, the suddenness of it, made Emma's chest tighten. Been doing everything she could to keep up, and yet, here he was, questioning her commitment, her worth. "I'm sorry," Emma stammered, trying to keep the tears at bay. Alex wasn't interested in apologies. His mind was made up. To the back of the store, his face hardening. "Things. You're done here." Stood frozen for a moment, stunned. Didn't believe what she was hearing. Fired. Just like that. No discussion. No second chance. It felt like it had gone silent, even though the customers continued to move about, oblivious to the gravity of the moment. Deep breath, fighting back the sting of humiliation. It slowly, walking toward the break room to collect her things. Passed by her coworkers, their faces filled with shock and sympathy. Emma couldn't bring herself to look them in the eye. Didn't want their pity. She just wanted to escape the situation as quietly as possible. While Alex stood near the front of the store, his decision final, his back turned to the rest of the staff, convinced that this was the right call, that he had no choice but to enforce the rules. Did he know this rash decision was about to set off a chain of events that would shatter his entire understanding of the store and of Emma herself? Gathered her things, her mind raced. No idea what was coming next. One thing was certain, her story was far from over. Gathered her things from the break room, her mind was spinning. Sting of Alex's words echoed in her ears. Here. Those four words felt like a punch to the gut. She had never imagined this would happen. Always tried to stay under the radar, work hard, and prove herself. It was all over at least. That's what she thought. She was halfway to the door when she heard a voice. "Wait." Turned to see one of her coworkers, Sarah, standing in the doorway of the break room, both shocked and sympathetic. "Oh, sorry," Sarah said, stepping closer. "Oh, you've been doing your best. You don't deserve this." Smiled faintly, but the tears that had been threatening to spill now began to well up in her eyes. She said, her voice barely above a whisper, "I guess it just wasn't enough." Hesitated for a moment, then lowered her voice. "You need to know something. This isn't just about your work. Something much bigger." At her, confused. "What do you mean?" Glanced around to make sure no one else was listening, then whispered, "Alex has no idea who you really are." Heart skipped a beat. "What are you talking about?" Sarah could respond. The store's back door opened, and in walked a man in a sharp suit. All with a confident stride and an air of authority that immediately commanded attention. Emma froze when she saw him. The store owner walked straight up to Emma, his eyes softening when he saw her. "Emma, we need to talk." The owner was a regular presence at the store, but he rarely got involved in the day-to-day operations. Seen him around, but she never imagined he would take an interest in her. She asked, her voice trembling slightly. "Sorry about this," the owner said, his tone apologetic but firm. "Heard what happened, and I need to clear something up." Around at the confused faces of her co-workers, including Sarah, who was now standing next to her, watching with a mix of concern and curiosity. "Emma," the store owner continued, "I'm aware that you've been dealing with a lot lately, and I know about your situation. What doesn't know is that you're not just any employee here." Heart raced. She didn't understand. Turned to Sarah, then back to Emma. "Emma, I should have told Alex who you are earlier, but I thought it would be better if you introduced yourself when the time was right." He paused for a moment, then added, "Emma, you're my wife." Hit Emma like a thunderclap. Her eyes widened in shock. "My wife," she repeated, almost in disbelief. The store owner replied, his voice soft but steady. "Alex had no idea to keep things private, especially with you being pregnant. But it seems it's time to clear the air." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. The store owner, her husband, was the man in charge of the entire chain of stores. The man who had given Alex the job. The same man who had entrusted him to run the store efficiently. "So, Alex doesn't know who I am." Trying to process everything, the store owner said, shaking his head, "I never told him you to be treated like everyone else, to work hard and earn respect on your own. See now that Alex hasn't been fair to you." Felt a mix of emotions swirling inside her. Relief, disbelief. Never expected something like this to happen. "I'm sorry for how he treated you," the store owner continued. "Wanted you to go through this, especially not while you're carrying our child. Care of this. I'll make sure Alex understands the consequences of his actions." Stood there, trying to process everything. She realized that this wasn't just about her job, it was about something much bigger. Power, assumptions, and how people were treated when they weren't seen for who they truly were. The owner turned to Sarah. "Please, go find Alex and let him know I'll be having a conversation with him." Nodded quickly and rushed off, leaving Emma and the store owner alone. The store owner said, gently placing a hand on her shoulder, "You don't need to worry. I'll make sure this is resolved." Incredible employee, and no one, especially not Alex, can take that away from you. Looked at her husband. A sense of clarity washed over her. Fought so hard to prove herself, but the battle was far from over. Had made a mistake, one that would have consequences he never saw coming. She was about to show everyone that, even in the face of adversity, she was stronger than they could ever imagine. It didn't take long for the store owner to take action. It quickly among the staff that a serious conversation was taking place in the manager's office, though still reeling from the shock of the revelation. With a quiet sense of determination. Spent weeks feeling powerless, but now she knew the truth and it was about to change everything. The owner, with his commanding presence, didn't waste any time. Straight to the manager's office, where Alex had been sitting, probably still under the impression that he had everything under control. Alex had no idea what was coming his way. The door to the office opened. Alex looked up, his expression still one of smug confidence. And he saw the store owner's stern face. His smile faltered. The store owner began, his voice cold but calm. "We need to talk." Still caught off guard, stood up from his desk. "Sir." The store owner closed the door behind him, locking eyes with Alex. "I've just spoken with Emma." His eyes narrowed. He told her she's not pulling her weight, been slacking off. And the owner held up a hand, silencing him. "About her work ethic." "Alex, it's about you." Blinked, confused. "I don't understand," the store owner said, his voice growing firmer. Alex, I've been letting you run this store, thinking you were doing what was best. You've forgotten something important, something that should have been clear from the beginning. He opened his mouth to speak, but the store owner cut him off. My wife, hit Alex like a slap, his face going pale. What, your wife? The store owner replied, you've been treating her as just another employee, assuming she was just some pregnant cashier. Been here for a reason, working hard for her own reasons. You have no right to treat her the way you have. Stammered, trying to regain his composure. Oh, I didn't realize. The store owner interrupted. You didn't realize. Took the time to understand her situation. Saw her as anything more than a worker to be managed. The owner's gaze turned icy. You crossed a line, Alex. You don't get to belittle my wife, especially not when she's doing everything she can to keep up her work ethic. Know what she's capable of. On the other hand, have failed as a manager. Was visibly shaking now, in the magnitude of his mistake. I didn't mean to. I just thought she wasn't doing enough. Trying to keep the store running efficiently. The owner took a step closer, his voice now tinged with anger. Trying to enforce rules without considering the circumstances. Pride get in the way of being a good leader. And now, there are consequences. His eyes widened, fear creeping in. What does that mean? The owner paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. You're fired, Alex. Effective immediately. Opened his mouth to protest, but no words came out. Of being dismissed so suddenly left him speechless. HR, take care of your final paycheck, the store owner added. But you're done here. A moment. Alex just stood there, stunned and silent. Her career at the store had come crashing down in an instant. Had prided himself on his leadership, had failed to recognize the most basic truth, the value of empathy and respect for others. Store owner turned to leave. He added, I'll make sure Emma gets the support she needs. If you ever speak to anyone here the way you spoke to her again, you'll regret it. Watched him walk out, the door closing softly behind him. Alone in the office, the reality of his actions sinking in. Emma stood outside the office, her hands trembling but her heart lighter than it had been in weeks. And expected things to unfold this way, and prepared to walk away from the store to find a new path forward. But now, it seemed justice had been served. Took a deep breath, faced the next chapter. This wasn't just about a job, about her dignity and the recognition she deserved. The owner had made it clear, Emma was not to be underestimated. For Alex, he would learn the hard way that actions have consequences. Following Alex's firing were a whirlwind. He spread through the store, and Emma could feel the shift in the atmosphere. Workers were both relieved and supportive, offering her smiles and nods of approval. Seeing her struggle under Alex's harsh leadership, and now, it felt like a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. The biggest change came when the store owner personally spoke to Emma. Already spoken to HR, he told her, his voice kind but firm. On the schedule, but this time, I want to make sure you're treated with the respect you deserve. Still processing everything, nodded slowly. Spent so much time trying to keep up, trying to prove herself, that she hadn't realized just how much she had been undervalued. Relieved to hear those words, but they also stirred something deep inside her, something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in a long time. Hope. To offer you more than just your old position, the store owner continued. The way you work, Emma. I've seen the way you care for the team and how you keep things running even when you're struggling. It's time for you to take on more responsibility. Heart skipped a beat. Responsibility. The store owner said, nodding. Offer you a managerial position. It's a big step. Believe you're ready for it. Left Emma speechless. A managerial role. Never imagined that would be within reach. Always worked hard, but the idea of being in charge, making decisions, it felt surreal. So felt right. She had spent so much of her life working for others, doing her best to prove herself. And now, the chance to lead was within her grasp. Oh, what to say? Emma said, her voice barely above a whisper. Have to say anything right now? The store owner replied with a warm smile. But I want you to know that the opportunity is there whenever you're ready. A deep breath, feeling a sense of empowerment she had never known before. And knocked down, but she wasn't staying there. Chance to rise, not just for herself, but for her baby, and for all the women who had been underestimated or overlooked. She left the office that day. She felt a newfound sense of purpose, earned her place in this world, and now she was ready to take on whatever came next. It wasn't over. In fact, it was just beginning. Knew, with absolute certainty, that nothing no one could stand in her way. Alex, his world had crumbled in an instant. Confident and self-assured manager now found himself at the mercy of the store owner's decision. A job he thought he had mastered, reputation tarnished, and his career hanging by a thread. Alex was forced to confront the reality of his actions. Following his dismissal were filled with uncertainty. Never imagined that his behavior, his harsh treatment of Emma would cost him so much. He always prided himself on his ability to lead rules, but in his pursuit of maintaining control, he had alienated those around him. Had always believed that being a tough leader was the way to success, that the more demanding he was, the more respect he would command. Emma had been a challenge he couldn't tolerate, a symbol of weakness in his perfect world. Took the time to understand her struggles, her dedication, or the circumstances she was working under. In the end, was his downfall. As he sat at home, the reality of his mistake began to sink in. Lost not only his job but his dignity, and colleagues who had once looked up to him were now distancing themselves. Calls and messages that had once poured in with praise and admiration had stopped. He was left alone with his regret, bitter pill to swallow. But Alex couldn't deny the truth. He had made a serious error in judgment. He had disrespected the ones who had worked under him were the ones who had made the store successful, ones who deserved his respect, not his cruelty. There was one person who would make sure Alex truly understood the gravity of his actions. The owner, having had enough of Alex's behavior, reached out to him directly. Be clear, Alex, the store owner said when they spoke on the phone, wasn't just unprofessional, it was personal. Emma is not just another employee, one who's worked tirelessly for this store, and you crossed a line. Let that kind of behavior slide. Felt a wave of shame wash over him. He replied, his voice heavy. Messed up. Didn't see her for who she really was. Took the time to get to know her. The store owner continued, his voice stern but calm. Because of that, you're out of a job. Not all. I've made sure your actions are on record. Follow you. His heart sank. He hadn't expected the consequences to be so severe. He begged, I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I didn't know who she was. Need to know. The store owner interrupted, treated her with respect regardless. Don't face the consequences of your actions. You've learned something from this. Was left with nothing but the sound of the dial tone as the call ended. Silence in his apartment was deafening. Now, he had failed, and not just as a manager, but as a person. His arrogance had cost him everything. Ahead would be long for Alex. He would have to rebuild his reputation, his career, and perhaps even his self-respect. Take time, and in the meantime, he had to live with the consequences of his actions. She was moving forward, leaving the past behind. Downfall was a bitter reminder of the importance of empathy, respect, and understanding in leadership. He was left to pick up the pieces of his shattered career. Emma was on the rise, ready to take on a new chapter in her life with confidence, strength, and the unwavering belief that she had earned her place. And it wasn't just about who had the power in the workplace, but recognizing the value in others, treating them with dignity, and knowing that no one is ever just a role or a title. She was far more than just a pregnant cashier, forced to be reckoned with. And Emma found herself settling into her new role as the store's manager. The shock of her promotion had worn off, and what remained was a quiet but undeniable sense of pride. Always known her worth, but now, the store owner's trust in her was the affirmation she needed to believe it fully. Stay in charge was nerve-wracking. Always worked hard to avoid the spotlight, to stay out of the way and let others lead. She was the one in charge, had to make decisions, set the tone, and guide her team. Was immense, but Emma was no stranger to hard work. Been underestimated, overlooked, and dismissed, yet here she was, standing tall, proved that she belonged. And welcomed her leadership with open arms. Seen how she had been treated by Alex, and they knew how much she had endured. They saw her for what she truly was, a capable, compassionate leader who cared about the well-being of everyone around her. Weeks went by. Emma proved herself time and again. Implemented new systems that improved the store's efficiency, all while maintaining the warm, welcoming environment that her team thrived in. How to balance the books, manage the staff, and handle the difficult customer skills she had picked up during her years working in the store. And that, she brought a sense of fairness and respect that had been sorely lacking before. The most significant changes Emma brought was her commitment to creating an inclusive environment for her employees. The time to get to know each member of her team, learning their strengths, their challenges, and their personal goals. Sure, everyone had a voice, encouraging open communication and fostering a sense of camaraderie. Her confidence grew, so did her reputation. But beyond the store, Emma was no longer just the quiet, pregnant cashier. She was a force to be reckoned with. The biggest change wasn't just professional, it was personal. New role came the financial stability and confidence she had been searching for. Always been independent, but now she felt empowered in ways she never had before. Able to plan for her future, for her baby, and for herself. Took time to focus on her well-being, both physically and emotionally, and attending prenatal classes, preparing for the arrival of her child with a sense of calm and excitement. Surrounded herself with supportive friends and family, people who lifted her up rather than tearing her down. Home, things were different, too. The storyteller, her husband, had always been a quiet presence in her life, but now they had a deeper connection, not just as his wife but as an equal, a partner in every sense of the word. About their future, about the baby, and about the life they were building together. The owner had always been supportive, but now he took an active role in ensuring Emma's success. In on her regularly, offering guidance when she needed it but always giving her the space to make her own decisions. And she proved that trust was well placed. Changes in Emma's life were not just external, they were internal, too. Grown stronger, more resilient, and more self-assured. Faced adversity and come out the other side with a renewed sense of purpose. Proven to herself and to everyone around her that she was capable of anything. In the process, Emma had learned something invaluable: the power of standing up for herself, the importance of not letting others define her, and the strength that comes from knowing her own worth. Ahead, Emma knew there were challenges still to come, but she also knew she was ready for them. Fought for her place, and now she was ready to lead with compassion and the confidence that had once felt so out of reach. Alex, his fate was sealed. The consequences of his actions would follow him wherever he went, a constant reminder of the damage caused by his lack of empathy. Given a chance to grow, but instead his pride and arrogance blinded him. It was Emma who had risen above it all, proving that true leadership comes not from authority, but from respect, kindness, and understanding. The journey was far from over. She had made it through the storm, and now she was walking into the future, head held high, ready to face whatever came next with the strength she had always had inside her. It was yet to come. Months passed. Alex's life continued its downward spiral. The shock of his firing had faded, but the consequences of his actions lingered, and they followed him like a shadow. Never imagined that one decision, one instance of poor judgment could alter the course of his life so drastically. Spent years climbing the corporate ladder, assuming that his way was the only way, that being tough, being demanding, would earn him respect. Getting to understand that respect isn't something you can force. You earn through kindness, integrity, and empathy. His firing, Alex had tried to find another managerial position, to job after job, but his reputation preceded him. Colleagues spoke about his arrogance, his inability to lead with compassion, and his lack of understanding when it came to his team's needs. It became synonymous with poor leadership, and no company was willing to take a chance on him. The rejection was harsh, but Alex had no one to blame but himself. It had cost him everything, and now he was left to reflect on the choices he had made. As he sat alone in his small apartment, Alex received a call. A former coworker at the store, someone he had once considered a friend. "Alex," the voice on the other end said, sounding hesitant, "I just wanted to check in on you. Things didn't work out with the job, but I heard something. Thought you should know." His heart sank. "So did Emma," his former coworker said. "She's the new manager now, doing an incredible job, and everyone loves working with her." Alex was silent. The words hit him harder than he expected. The pregnant cashier he had belittled, the woman he had so easily dismissed, was now in charge. Sound of it, she was thriving. Couldn't help but feel a pang of jealousy, feeling of a man who had failed, a man who had lost his position of power and respect, now watching someone else rise to the top. And that was a feeling of regret. Alex realized something profound. He had been so focused on maintaining control, on being the tough guy, that he had never stopped to consider the people around him, never seen them as individuals with their own struggles, their own strengths, so focused on his own ego that he had lost sight of what it meant to be a true leader. And, though hard and painful, was clear. Leadership wasn't about commanding from above, about inspiring those around you, treating them with respect, and empowering them to succeed. Done that. Now, she was reaping the rewards of her hard work and compassion. Couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. Given the same opportunities, the same chances to succeed, squandered them, blinded by his own pride. On the other hand, had taken those opportunities and made something of them. He couldn't change the past. His mistakes were permanent, his reputation tarnished. Also knew that if he wanted to move forward, if he ever wanted to rebuild his career, he would have to start from scratch, learn from his failures, and embrace the lessons he had ignored for so long. Be easy. Rebuilding trust and respect took time, and he knew it would be a long road ahead. Step was acknowledging his mistakes and committing to change. Sat in his apartment that night, reflecting on everything that had happened. Alex made a silent vow to himself. He would do better. A better person, a better leader, and a better colleague. Just perhaps, there was still time for him to redeem himself. Now, he could only watch from the sidelines as Emma continued to rise. He had once underestimated was now everything he had failed to be a true leader. Respected and admired by all. Couldn't help but feel a deep sense of respect for her, knowing that she had earned everything she had achieved, while he had lost it all. The lesson was clear: never underestimate the strength of those you think are beneath you. Sometimes, those people are the ones who will rise the highest. Left wondering how you let them slip through your fingers. Months passed. Alex's life continued its downward spiral. The shock of his firing had faded, but the consequences of his actions lingered, and they followed him like a shadow. Never imagined that one decision, one instance of poor judgment could alter the course of his life so drastically. Spent years climbing the corporate ladder, assuming that his way was the only way, that being tough, being demanding, would earn him respect. Getting to understand that respect isn't something you can force. You earn through kindness, integrity, and empathy. His firing, Alex had tried to find another managerial position. To job after job, reputation preceded him. Colleagues spoke about his arrogance, his inability to lead with compassion, and his lack of understanding when it came to his team's needs. Became synonymous with poor leadership. No company was willing to take a chance on him. Of rejection was harsh, but Alex had no one to blame but himself. It had cost him everything, and now left to reflect on the choices he had made. As he sat alone in his small apartment, Alex received a call. A former coworker at the store, someone he had once considered a friend. "Alex," the voice on the other end said, sounding hesitant, "I just wanted to check in on you. Things didn't work out with the job, but I heard something. Thought you should know." His heart sank. "So did Emma," his former coworker said. "She's the new manager now, doing an incredible job. Everyone loves working with her." Alex was silent. The words hit him harder than he expected. The cashier he had belittled, the woman he had so easily dismissed, was now in charge. Sound of it, she was thriving. Couldn't help but feel a pang of jealousy, feeling of a man who had failed, a man who had lost his position of power and respect, now watching someone else rise to the top. And that, the feeling of regret. Alex realized something profound. He had been so focused on maintaining control, on being the tough guy, that he had never stopped to consider the people around him. Never seen them as individuals with their own struggles, their own strengths. So focused on his own ego that he had lost sight of what it meant to be a true leader. And, though hard and painful, was clear: leadership wasn't about commanding from above, about inspiring those around you, treating them with respect, and empowering them to succeed. Done that. Now was reaping the rewards of her hard work and compassion. Couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. Given the same opportunities, the same chances to succeed, squandered them, blinded by his own pride. On the other hand, had taken those opportunities and made something of them. He couldn't change the past. His mistakes were permanent, his reputation tarnished. Also knew that if he wanted to move forward, if he ever wanted to rebuild his career, he would have to start from scratch, learn from his failures, and embrace the lessons he had ignored for so long. Be easy. Rebuilding trust and respect took time, and he knew it would be a long road ahead. Step was acknowledging his mistakes and committing to change. Sat in his apartment that night, reflecting on everything that had happened, made a silent vow to himself. He would do better. A better person, a better leader, and a better colleague. Perhaps there was still time for him to redeem himself. Now, he could only watch from the sidelines as Emma continued to rise. He had once underestimated was now everything he had failed to be a true leader. Respected and admired by all. Couldn't help but feel a deep sense of respect for her, knowing that she had earned everything she had achieved, while he had lost it all. The lesson was clear: never underestimate the strength of those you think are beneath you. Sometimes, those people are the ones who will rise the highest. Left wondering how you let them slip through your fingers. Stood in the store one bright afternoon, overseeing her team and managing the flow of customers, she couldn't help but reflect on how far she had come. Certain cashier who had struggled under the weight of an oppressive manager to the confident leader she had become. The journey had been anything but easy, but every step had been worth it. Had flourished under her leadership. Renewed sense of morale, with everyone working together. They were valued, set the tone, respect, and a shared vision for success. She wasn't just managing the store, building a community, a team that supported each other, that communicated openly, and that worked together to achieve their goals. Changes in the store were tangible. The sales had gone up, satisfaction was at an all-time high, and the staff was more motivated than ever. Done what many thought was impossible. She had turned the store around, not through fear or harsh rules, but through empathy and unwavering belief in the potential of those around her. It wasn't just about the store anymore. Outside of work had also transformed, found balance, strength, and peace in a way she hadn't thought possible. Relationship with her husband, the store owner, had deepened, built on mutual respect and understanding. Partners in every sense of the word, working together not just for the success of the store, but for their family and their future. It came to a close. Emma took a moment to step outside and breathe in the fresh air. Sun bathed the streets in a golden light. She felt a quiet sense of accomplishment. It was due soon, and she couldn't wait to start this next chapter of her life. No matter what happened, she was ready. Learned so much about herself, her strength, resilience, and her ability to lead. Had faced challenges head-on and emerged stronger for it. Taken a chance on herself, and now she was reaping the rewards. Buzzed, interrupting her thoughts. It was a message from her team. For everything, Emma, we believe in you. Smiled, her heart swelling with pride. Earned their trust, their respect. Proven that leadership wasn't about authority or control. It was about lifting others up, empowering them, and creating an environment where everyone could succeed. She headed home. She thought about all the changes that had taken place in her life. Been long and filled with obstacles, but it had led her here strong, confident, and ready for whatever came next. Wasn't just the pregnant cashier anymore. Wasn't just the wife of the store owner. Emma, a leader in her own right, and nothing could take that away from her. Baby on the way, a thriving career, and a bright future ahead. Emma knew that this was only the beginning. Worked hard to get to this point, and she was ready to face the future with the same determination and strength that had carried her through everything. And Emma had proved that with hard work, belief in oneself, and a refusal to be held back by anyone or anything, anyone could rise to the top. As she looked toward the future, she was just getting started. We wrap up. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed Emma's journey. Share it with someone who needs a little inspiration, and subscribe for more empowering stories. Watching, and stay tuned for the next chapter of success.